Hello, Susanna here from The Good Property Company. I'm on a holiday, my son's behind the camera. I'm about to go for a run in Central Park and he's about to go skateboarding. He's being investigated by a dog. But Arthur wanted me to do a few videos while I was on holiday. Some of the things that we've been asked quite regularly about buy to sell, buy to let, and some of the questions we get emailed in. So, hello. So today's one is, what do I do if I'm buying a property with a tenant included? Well, don't worry about it. There are some additional stuff you need to know, and sometimes you do need to jog your solicitor. I have had instances where they haven't done everything, and actually, although I felt really frustrated by that, I didn't actually ask them to do the stuff. I made an assumption. Oh, don't worry, you could come across. So, you're buying the property with the tenant included. It may well mean that you get a discounted property. We'll be a while, so you can come by.
I know, I'm waiting for a car.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
There it is.
There you go. So, don't worry about it. The first thing is you will need to get in to see the property in the first place, and your landlord or your current owner who's selling to you, the landlord, needs to give the tenant 24 hours notice. So we have had instances where tenants refuse access. We've had instances where tenants don't turn up. We've had instances where they only set keys because, of course, the landlord's not very organised, as with the tenant, and they're not there. So you just need to kind of breathe a little bit longer in terms of inspecting. Then when you buy the property, prior to buying, there's a few things you need to know. One is the tenant in arrears? Because really frequently, the contract will be you are buying the property, plus you suddenly take on all responsibility for all tenant arrears. What? It's got nothing to do with me. So watch out for that and don't accept that. I would never accept that ever, because you've got so, basically, you end up buying the property and you have to pay for tenant arrears because you pay the current landlords up, which is just not cool at all. I just don't think that's acceptable. The second thing you want to do is figure out where is the tenant deposit. Again, you may be buying from a very well organised landlord, or you may be buying from somebody who just hasn't got their stuff together. So you need to find out where the tenant's deposit is, has it been protected securely, and if it is in one of the 3 deposit schemes, how can that deposit be transferred to you? And insist on that deposit being transferred to you. We have one property that we bought like 3 years ago, and we are phoning the previous landlord. We know that he has transferred it, so we know that he has protected the deposit because we've seen all the paperwork. But in order to get that deposit transferred to us, because we're now going to evict the tenant because we're going to do some renovations on the property, he has to do something with the tenant deposit scheme, and he's kind of just doesn't care and doesn't want to do it. So it's a pain in the neck. So number 1, make sure the deposit is definitely secured legally. Number 2, make sure the deposit can be transferred to you. And then the next thing you want to do, and this is a thing that in the past my sisters haven't always done. I didn't ask them to do it, but I naively didn't even know it needed to be done. So I'm just letting you know, is you need to serve the tenant notice that they have a new landlord, and therefore they need to pay the new landlord, not the old landlord. So that is a section 48. Don't worry about it. Just instruct your lawyer that they need to serve that notice. And it's a section 48, and it is the legal form that informs the tenant of the landlord's new address. Because my understanding, and you must take legal advice on this, I'm not a lawyer, my understanding is they don't technically need to pay if they haven't been served that form. So again, why do I know this? Because we bought a property where the tenant continued to pay the old landlord, and we had a right little ding-dong to get the money back from the land. We got it, but it was a pain in the neck. And then finally, you need to really look to have an inspection so that you understand what state the property was in, what belongs to the tenant and what belongs to the previous landlord, which you're now buying, basically. So those are all the kind of practical stuff. Yes, it will make you worry a little bit more, but frankly, tenants are people, so go and have a good chat with them. And then once you've bought the thing, the first thing we do is we go in and meet the tenant. Now, we always go in a team of 2 because we haven't chosen that tenant. We don't know what they're like. 99.9 times out of 100, they're pretty good people, but you just don't know what they're like, and there's no way I'm going to have a sole worker going into that property. We go in, we meet the tenant, and we basically do an inspection, explain about the standing order, explain about the payment date, explain who we are, explain we're really decent. We always want to give back deposits, but that depends on the tenant actually returning the property in a good condition, and sit and have a good cup of tea with them and try and forge a good working relationship from the beginning. Now, one of the reasons we go in physically, with obviously permission and with notice, so that they can put a face to the name, and also they don't think, absent landlord, I wonder if I can maybe get away with, not necessarily paying the rent. And I do find that by having that kind of face-to-face, have a cup of tea, explain all the processes, and also explain all the legal processes that we want to do, the gas, the electricity, and everything's safe for them, there is a connection that is very difficult for them to start taking the mickey out of. So I strongly suggest that you give them legal notice, go in, meet with them and say, look, I'm here to talk through all the processes. The last thing I want you to do when you do that meeting is check that you have all of their details. So if you're a member of, say, the National Landlord Association, which we are, we actually use their tenant referencing form. And it means that you get their email address, their mobile phone number, their national insurance number. We get an employer's reference. So even if your previous landlord has not taken all those references, I would suggest you want to get all that information. Really, I suppose, in case things go wrong, your tenant is then traceable. So buy it. If you're buying a property with a tenant involved, unless that tenant is exhibiting extremely difficult behaviour way in advance, it's just a process. It's something we've done really well with. I mean, we've had a couple of crazy ones. We did have some unnamed dog poo once through. Or we bought a set of flats and we had one crazy guy and he put dog poo through all the other flats, which is horrible. But that's just like 1% of human beings are a bit odd. We have had very few bumps overall buying properties with flats, but because we follow those processes. So I hope that's helpful. I'm now going to go and do a 10k around Central Park. My son's away to skateboard, aren't you? And then I'm going to an art museum and he's going to continue skateboarding. I'll do another one later. Take care. Bye.